What's going on, guys? Jay here. I think everybody at one point in their life or another has decided that they want to be on TV, that there's something that they want to be famous for. For me growing up, that was I wanted to be in broadcast television. I want to have something to do with the news. And now there's a game called Not for Broadcast, which gives me the ability to do that, albeit with a slight twist. Let's take a look. Before we get into things, guys, I want to say thank you to Tiny Build Games and Not Games for the review code for this video. There was a time in my life that I really wanted to go into television. I actually studied television production in high school. I didn't necessarily want to be a broadcaster. I had no desire to be an anchor or on-air talent, but I really liked being one of the behind-the-scenes guys. And two of my very best friends, brothers really, and members of the Cretans Guild and Bob and Corey both went into television. And let me just say, I'm pretty happy I ended up dodging that particular bullet. But I won't lie to you, the bug to work in broadcast has never really gone away. I was able to scratch it a bit with board games like The Network and through watching things like Sports Night or 30 Rock, but I never really got to experience it in the way I'd wanted to. Enter Not for Broadcast, a newsroom simulator developed by Not Games and published by Tiny Build Games. Of course, it's not as simple as just being a broadcast simulator. Nah, that'd be far too mundane and simple. No, Not for Broadcast is a dystopian broadcast propaganda simulator, set in a mirror universe version of the 1980s. You play a hapless janitor who gets roped into running the booth when the regular board operator, Dave, God, I hate Dave, skips the country, leaving you in charge of the entire mess. I'm only going to show you footage from the tutorial level and a bit from the expansion called the Telethon to avoid spoilers, because the game goes from 0 to 60 real fast. I can assure you, you do not want to miss out on anything that happens, as the game is 50% Monty Python and 50% Alan Moore's V for Vendetta, a wonderful smorgasbord of absurdist humor and incredibly sinister themes. At its base, the game is incredibly simple. You control the camera operations either via mouse clicks or keyboard commands, you choose which ads to run and when to run them, and you censor any bad language that might come up via the spacebar. There's also some interference that you need to manage your way through by moving a slider up and down via the mouse wheel or by manually moving the dial with a click and drag. At its simplest form, the game is very easy to understand. Everything's laid out methodically and logically, and it does a remarkable job of lulling you into a false sense of security. Because, my friends, I'm here to tell you that it will all go off the rails. Everything will go wrong, and there are many, many moral choices you'll be making as you broadcast the national news. But before we get to that, let's look at some of the basic gameplay. When things first kick off, Dave gives you a buzz and implies that he's just running late. God, I hate Dave. And he needs you to give him a hand, which starts with throwing the master control power switch. Simple enough, I thought. Though looking back at it, I realized that the collections of plugs and choices of what to power are going to lead to utter chaos down the road. And indeed they do. As a one-person team, the game starts out with choices of what ads you want to run for the commercial breaks. You'll know how many ad breaks you have coming up, and it's as simple as deciding if you want Exercise with Ham Sleeves or My Salad Weekly to run in the first slot, and then choosing which ad you want in the subsequent slots. It all starts so innocently. Then we slide into Anchor Prep, where Jenny innocently works on Jeremy Donaldson's makeup and offers him prawns. Of course, Jeremy is allergic to prawns, which leads to behind-the-scenes bickering and arguing before going live. This is a slight hint of the utter chaos you're about to experience, because once the previous show ends, you toss live to Jeremy, and then have to switch to the news title introductory sequence. This is where we begin our first foray into controlling the multiple cameras and working out the timing. You get comfy switching between 1 and 2, because soon you'll need to pick up 3 and 4 to keep viewers entertained. In many cases, you'll receive a countdown on screen telling you when to switch things over, but in other occurrences you'll need to rely on your intuition of when to change things up. The interference minigame is the next thing you're introduced to. The game requires you to move a dot around a screen via a manually controlled slider that you have to click on and move, or via the mouse wheel. Both of these do work, but I do have to admit I didn't have a ton of luck as far as accuracy goes using the mouse wheel. It felt really delayed with the movement on the dot, and in a game that requires you to move this dot around on screen to avoid obstacles, the fidelity of your movement is paramount to success. Your mileage may vary on this aspect, but personally for me it was significantly easier to use the slider. Multicam is where the game really starts to up the chaotic nature of the design. You need to be sure you're switching cameras, but not haphazardly. You want to make sure you're focusing on the person speaking, logically, but this is where you need to think like a viewer, because you don't want to linger on one person for too long because it could get boring. You need to bounce between the person talking, a reaction shot from someone else on set, a wide shot to show everyone else involved, and when you toss in the fact you'll be doing this while an absolute diva of an actor is performing an unhinged interview, you've got the censor button suddenly making an appearance. The censor button has been the thing I've honestly had the biggest issue with. See, there's about a 2-second delay between the studio feed and what gets broadcast, so my timing on censoring out the various twats, shits, f***s, and p***s has been suspect. I've missed a few here and there, and I've seen my viewership numbers dip a bit. It's tricky because you have to get used to listening to both broadcasts at the same time and make sure you're censoring when the red area shows up in the audio waveform. Again, the game is chaos, the absolute best kind of chaos. I'm going to switch now from actual gameplay to something that shows after the session is complete in order to avoid showing too many spoilers. The archive is where you'll be able to review your entire broadcast as it aired. This is nice because you'll be able to see the weak points you can improve upon and how things looked for viewers at home. The Rushes option allows you to review all cameras that were on during your broadcast. For instance, during the interview with the actor I mentioned earlier, he goes off on a tirade of epic proportions, but when the broadcast is rolling, you weren't able to view it or listen to it. Here you can see him go off on a truly epic tangent, and hear the entire rant that he went on. Finally, Adverts lets you review the ads you've had running during your commercial breaks. Johnny Hamsleeves isn't fat, but you are. The Telethon expansion just recently dropped, and it's just as mad as the original game. Tasked with rebroadcasting an old telethon, you'll need to keep viewer numbers up and watch as host Graham Bannon slowly slips into madness knowing that none of the scheduled acts have shown up due to gridlock around the Capitol. It plays very similarly to the original, which isn't a bad thing. The situation is, of course, ridiculous, which is welcomed, and the difficulty is slightly higher due to things like tape degradation preventing you from showing suitable footage, as well as the power needing to be more closely controlled. It's a great addition to the title and something I've had a lot of fun playing. Before I finish, I want to call out specifically the actors in the game. They all clearly revel in the absolute ridiculousness and absurdity of the world they're inhabiting, and they make the most of the true weirdness that they encounter. It's a fun throwback to when FMV games ruled the marketplace, and with the advancement of using numerous camera tracks and cuts that you control yourself to add even more depth to a truly underutilized medium for video games, it's a nice step forward for something that I hope gets used more regularly by more developers. So final thoughts, is Not for Broadcast worth the $20? For me, I would say yeah, I think so. I will say it's only on Steam at this point, so you need to pick it up there, and it is only running on Windows. So if you have a Mac, you're kind of out of luck unless you're running Boot Camp. As someone who loves broadcast news and the behind-the-scenes chaos that goes into running a television station and a news program, this was kind of right up my alley. Is this for everyone? I can't say it is. If you don't have a love for broadcast journalism, this might not be your bag. It might not hook you right off the bat, but what this really reminded me of as I was playing it was a single-player version of Spaceteam, which was a multiplayer game on iOS. It's got all the chaos and all the different jobs going on at the same time of that game, only you're the one solely in charge of it. So if you like games like that have a lot of chaos and a lot of things going on in them at the same time, I think this is something that you'd enjoy. Bottom line though, I'm personally having an absolute blast with it. But now I want to hear from you. What are some of your favorite FMV games? Whether they're classic ones from back in the 90s or new ones that are coming out today, let me know in the comments down below. That's going to wrap it up for today, guys. If you enjoyed today's video, please do consider liking it, sharing it, subscribing, and ringing the notification bell. Until next time, I have been Jay. I appreciate you being here. As always, play more games, stay square, and we'll talk to you soon.